Okay, then we also have list. So list is the third type of option. It's a list of option is a control that can resemble concerning its mechanics each of the two controls previously analyzed, depending on the presence of the Boolean attribute multiple. This attribute changes radically the behavior of the list and making possible the selection of only one single option at a time or many. So basically what we're saying is lists can resemble checkboxes in the sense that you can select multiple options, and it can also resemble the radio buttons in the sense that you can select one option that depends on the attribute that you add, and that attribute is multiple, right? That attribute makes it possible for either the form to accept single input or multiple inputs, right? The structure of a list is composed mainly by two elements, right? So this time not just one. The rest will be using just one element, right? We use the inputs and we specify the type, which is either checkbox or radio. Here we get to specify that using an attribute, but we can, to create this list that lets us have different options to pick from, we use two elements, right? And those elements are select and option. So the select acts as the container for the options, and the options that represents one of the many options the control may present. So just think of it like when we work with tables, we had table row. Then inside the table row, each data was represented by the TD elements, right? So the same thing goes here. The select element is the container, while the option carries each of the options that should be in the list. So when the multiple attribute is absent, a list control behaves like a radio button loop, where only one option can be selected at a time. So if we select this, copy it, and then see how it behaves. So we can just so yeah, basically, okay, let me indent this too. We can see here that we have the select and we have the two options. We have name, gender, option, male and female. Now, how this list will behave is that since we do not specify the multiple attributes, it is going to let the user select only one option. So let's save this and look at it. So see, we have a list, we have a drop down list here. So we get to choose only one. We cannot choose one, and so we get to choose just one option. Right, so that's how it works if you do not specify the multiple attributes. Okay, and the multiple attribute is a Boolean attribute, and what that means is that it only has two options, either true or false, right? This is a Boolean attribute. It's either yes or no, or true or false. You get to understand that more when we look at JavaScript. So in the previous example, you can see that what's sent to the server is the content of the selected option, right? but authors can change its behavior if they think it's necessary by declaring the attribute value for the option. When the attribute is present, its value is sent to it. Okay, so what this is saying is that now when the users interact with our form and they select mail and they say send data, right, and they click on this button here, what is sent to the server side is gender and male, which is what the user selected. If I write cow here, what will be sent to the server side is cow, because that is what I wrote here and that is what the user selected, right? But if I want, for any reason I want this to be different, I can also add the value attributes, and if I add the value attributes, that's what will be sent instead. So whenever the user selects this option, whether it is cow I wrote here or horse, what will be sent to the server side is this value here, male, right? So this, you can choose to add this or you can choose to leave it depending on the context of the form, right? So just, okay, let me just undo this. Okay, that works. Okay. So going back, now when the multiple attribute is present, the list behaves like a set of checkboxes where not only one but many options can be selected. This configuration requires that a couple of square braces follow any value the author chooses for the name attributes. If this requirement isn't fulfilled, processing agents will receive only the first selected option. The next example shows a list of options that can be selected without restrictions. So also make use of the value attributes in the options to avoid unnecessary long values during data processing server side. So let's just grab this. Copy this. Come here. Paste it. So what we see here is that the multiple attribute is specified. So if you see here, we wrote it inside the select opening tag, the multiple boolean attribute is specified. So now what that makes that each of these options can be selected, right? You can select one, you can select two, you can select three, as much as you want to. So, but there's also another problem. If you notice here, we have a name, categories, and there's a square open and close bracket here. And what this does is that it lets the server side receive all the options. So if I remove this and the user goes ahead to see this form, they can actually, let me save it and show you. They can actually select more than one option, right? But the problem is that you see it's no longer like this. It's now like this because you can select this, select anything you select to be added. The problem is that when the server side receive the data, they will only get the first one that was selected, and we do not want that, right? So that is why the square bracket is added. Okay, not like that. So I can just undo. Square brackets are added so that all the options that the user selects will be accounted for, basically. So that's how it works. So just think of it like adding something to a cart. So when I click on this now, it is added. When I click on this, it is added. When I click on this, it is added. That is how it works. And here they also specified the value attributes. Now you see they basically just use it to shorten the names, so that in case you have lists that contains very long names, you don't want to have to deal with long names, you can just use the value. So now whenever the user clicks on any of this and selects and sends the data, what the server side sees is this value, not the full text that was specified here. While for this that we do not have any value, it is the full content that is specified here that is received on the server side. So that's it for list. Then okay, we have buttons, right? So a list is practically useless without a button. Imagine you come here and there's nothing to select this form, there's nothing to submit the form, right? So you finish filling all your details and there's nothing to submit. That's basically pointless. Nobody wants that. It's not convenient, it's not efficient, it is horrible. So that's why we have buttons, right? The button is a special type of control that's been designed to interact with the user in a singular way. An action is executed every time the user presses it. So unlike all the other controls in a form, it doesn't let the user provide a data or information. What it does is it lets the user carry out an action. So there's a wide range of buttons, each having some peculiarities in relation to its capabilities or behavior. But here we only analyze the two most widely used in basic forms. So we have submit button and reset button. Those are the two most widely used. Like the name implies, submit button, you use it to submit your form. Reset, let's say you made a mistake and you want to reset the form without submitting it, you use the reset button to reset the form. So submit buttons. A submit button has a predefined action of submitting the form when activated, unless other mechanisms for form submissions are provided. The presence of this button is necessary if there is an intention to allow users to submit the form, right? So if you want your users to be able to submit your forms, you have to add the submit button. Submit buttons are inserted with the input element having the value type as submit, right? So the value attribute is important in this control as its value is displayed as a label inside the button. The following example shows a form with a text input, right? So let's see. This is basically what we had before. We had, let me just undo this. So basically we have a type. If the type is not submit, we would not get the button. And whatever we write here is what we show. So you can also just write submit here. So save this. See that the value here is now submit, right? So change it to subscribe, whatever you want it to be, basically. That's what to be displayed here. But the type has to be submit. If not, let me clean something here. It is now acting like a text input, right? So it is no longer what we want. So that's why we have to always specify the type as submit. Then reset buttons. Like submit buttons, reset buttons also have a predefined action. But in this case, the predefined action consists in the reset of the form fields to their initial values. In other words, the state of the fields in the form that's been reset is the same as when the page has loaded. So when you load a page newly, that clear, clean, blank form that you have, that's what happens when you click on the reset button. The action removes all changes the user has applied to the values of the controls. It will be good to note here that all controls may have a predefined value. This is a value that presents in the form when the page loads. The way authors have to specify this default value depends on the control. To now specify a default value in a particular control type, check the reference, right? So, okay, there are different ways to specify default values, right? So, let's say, for example, let's do that for text, right? So, what you just copy this, I'm ready. So let's go to our text inputs. That should be the first one. And I want to change that. Let me bring it up first. I want to change that to random name. Or I can say your name. If I save this and reload it, you see that it displays your name here by default. So you can just you can start typing your own name, right? Why for something like checkbox, it is the boolean attribute that says checked. So if I save this F5, you see that default movies come checked. Same thing for radio buttons. So if I save this and I reload, you see that this is checked by default, right? So that's how it works. So every form type has the way you specify default values. So even if I come to this form and I type stuff and just select random, select this and select this, select this, select this, and I click on the reset button, it will take me back to the way it was before. Right, so that's the use of the reset button. So the reset button is just the same way you write the submit button. You specify the attributes of reset, right? You can see it here. Then the value is what will be shown on the button as the name of the button. So see it here. So if I click on, let me just fill the form. Fill some rubbish stuff here. Alright, so when I click reset the form, you see it takes me back to the way it was when I first loaded the page. So that's basically how the reset button works. Now, labeling controls, almost any control in the form can be labeled. Labeling controls is a word file operation that enhances accessibility on many fonts. This association between a piece of text and a control will solve the problem noted in previous example of this tutorial, particularly with checkboxes and radio buttons, right? So let's say I want to click on this. If I click on video games, I want this to be selected. If I click on this, I want this to be selected. Well, now it's not possible because they are not labeled. So a label can be assigned with the label element. The easiest of the two existing methods for assigning a label to a control consists of declaring both the text and the control as content of the label element. The next example has a couple of controls associated with labels. Associated to labels with this method. There you can see how a control receives the focus when the label is clicked. So let's just use this one for gender, for radio buttons, because I feel like I don't know why I keep selecting. Oh god, just stop here. Anyways, I'll just have to. So let's put it under here. So radio buttons, right? So let's put it under here. Okay, so basically what we've looked at before, we have the input type, radio, name, gender, value male, value female, right? So the only difference is that they are inside the label element, right? So let me specify that. And what that does is that now if I save this and I reload the page, so when I click on male, it selects male. But here, if I click on higher than, it doesn't select it. I have to click on this radio button itself. But here I can just click on the name or the value female and it selects it. So that's the use of labeling your form controls, right? So it lets you, it makes the form basically more accessible for the user. select your form appear more professional. As you can see here, it's no longer stacked. Everything is on the same line, and this looks better, right? Then we also have grouping controls. Sometimes when a form is large, segmentation might play a role in the improvement of organization and ease of use. This is why HTML provides the field set element, which is a container for controls. So with this element, authors can make divisions to the form and organize controls thematically. A field set can also have a title to identify the composition or purpose of the set of controls it contains. This title can be provided with the legend element, which must be declared as the first child of the field set. The example shows this one form. So basically, let's just add this. All they are doing is making field sets. So we can see okay, let's put everything from here to here in a group called personal information, right? So first of all, we have to put everything inside the field sets, which groups everything together. So yep, so now everything here is in one group. Then we specify the name of the group with the legend, and it has to be the legend element. It has to be the first thing inside the group. So just say personal information. Save this. Then let's check it out. Group. So we see now that everything here is inside the same group called personal information, and it provides us with this border around it, right? So it's a really cool way to present your forms, because it separates everything into different sections. It makes it easier for the user to understand, okay, this is what this is about, this is what this is about, in case your form is very large, right? So very, very important. And I think that's basically it with forms. This is all you need to know. There are more input types. You just have to Google them or check W3 schools. You would see different input types and just play around with them, see what it does, and explore a bit. So yeah, that's all from forms. And we have an exercise here that you guys are going to be doing for the first time. You're only the ones doing an exercise. So this is an assessment that we'll be checking. So you have to round this up by the end of the week, right? Depending on when this is posted. We have to round this up by the end of the week and send it to your screenshots of both what it looks like on the browser and your code. Send it to the group, right? Create a simple form from one of the pages from the previous cafe website. So one of the pages that we worked on, in any of these pages, you can just pick anyone and create a form. Then add in a new link which links to the form in the menu at the top of the page. So basically, let's say one of the files we worked on. So preferably you want to pick this one that we worked on, this example 4, and you just add the link to this contact, for example, so that when you click on contact, it should take you to your form, right? For now it's mail 2 that is here, but you can change it to the link to the form that you created. So just create a form, then link it using this specific example that I've worked on, so that whenever you click on this contact, it takes you to your form. I can ask for details like name, age, gender, interest, hobbies, a bit of information about you. Just create a form that touches on all the form controls I've talked about today: reset button, submit, radio, list, checkboxes, single line input, multiple line inputs. And you can try things like password, email. Just have fun with it. So yeah, I'll be looking at that at the end of the week, or I'll ask for it on the group. So let's watch that space. That's basically it from today. I think then after that I would send the exercises that I'll be working on, which will be breakout exercises. So that's basically it. So let's see how it goes. Anyways, that's all for today. Thank you all for your time. Catch you guys in the next one.